Welcome everyone to today's webinar. My name is Matt Bear. I'm the founder of Q4Launch, and we are excited that y'all are along for the ride with us today as we dive into this topic, 5 strategies to maximize your peak season. It's a topic I'm excited about, as many of us are finding ourselves within the travel industry headed into peak season. I know we have some ski destinations on the call as well today. Excited you guys are here because it's never too early to start planning for peak season. Maybe if you're in a ski destination or you're in another destination that tends to get more what we would call winter season travelers, at least in North America. But maybe you're on that kind of that flip schedule, which we know many of you are, many of our customers are as well. But most of us, I would say, are probably in this season where we're headed into peak season, or you may find yourselves already in the throes of it. But great time to connect on this topic and help share some strategies to help you maximize the season you find yourself in. A little bit about myself. I started Q4Launch 8.5 years ago, which is awesome. We're based here in Charleston, South Carolina. We've got a team of 40 people that work on destination marketing with some of the top destinations all around the world, from Maui to Singapore and just about everywhere in between, although we are heavily U.S. based from a customer base. And of course, based here in Charleston, that makes that very easy. So Charleston, South Carolina, for those of you that are familiar with Charleston, West Virginia, we're in Charleston, South Carolina, which we love to call the home of hospitality, but a great place to call home for a destination travel marketing company like ourselves. So much of what we're going to talk today about are things that we're talking about working on as a team as we're helping customers and sharing those strategies with you all to help implement into your marketing. Today's webinar is one of a regular series that we do. If you're with us for the first time, we do about 2 webinars a month on various topics related to the travel industry, mostly around marketing or the things that impact our marketing world. So keep an eye out for those. You will get invitations to those for future webinars as well, and we look forward to seeing you on those future webinars. Awesome. Well, with that information, let's dive into our topic together today. We will be sending a copy of this recording out as well. We will also be using the chat panel for questions and answers at the end of our time together. So make sure to take advantage of both those opportunities. If you have questions, just drop them in the chat panel as we move throughout our time together, and then I'll circle back to those at the end of our time together. Awesome. Well, let's dive in here. I know we've all got a lot of things being in peak season. So the number one strategy we're going to talk about is using targeted emails to fill last-minute vacancies. And notice I said targeted, because I'm not necessarily talking about a mass email to your entire database. Many of you have information either through your email marketing software or through your guest database of where people are from. And when you think about a last-minute vacancy, you really need to make sure you're connecting with the idea that people could be coming, people are most likely to come for a last-minute vacancy in your drive market. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later on. But as you're thinking about that, you need to think about who in your database is most likely to connect with this type of message. So historically, we know email has the #1 ROI of any marketing medium. If you have a good system in place to send email, or you're working with somebody to do that, deploying email can be very fast, very efficient. If you don't have a system in place, I would go ahead and get one now, because when you need to send an email to fill a last-minute vacancy or a cancellation or a last-minute opportunity, you need to have a platform you're already set up on, ready to go to be able to do that. So I would go ahead and create that system so that you have that when you need it. And you should have it anyways, because you should be sending regular email blasts. If you follow our webinar series regularly, you know we talk a lot about that. But as we look at your database and we look at the list of people you have a we call it kind of a gold mine, because you have a list of people that are most likely to do business with you because they've done business with you in the past. So as you're thinking about marketing, and we talk about reaching our target customer and who that is, and you have all these different things marketers talk about, but if you have a database of people that you know have done business with you in the past, it's a tremendous opportunity to market to them, to reach them first with these opportunities. They are more likely to make a last-minute trip. It's because it's easier for them to make a last-minute decision because they know your destination, they know your property, they know what to expect. And when they know what to expect, you overcome a lot of the hesitations that keep people from booking. A lot of the things wrapped around fear, a lot of the things wrapped around the unknown, a lot of those things that as we talk to travelers and we study them, and we look at consumer behavior and we say, what stops people from making a booking? Past guests don't have all those same things because they have overcome those by being with you before, by being a customer before. We like to do business with people we've done business with before because we know what to expect. That's true across every industry, but especially true with travel decisions. So tremendous opportunity there to use your email and create targeted segments of that database around people who could take a last-minute trip. And if you've got minimums in your peak season, you probably need to be thinking about those too. Now we're going to talk a little bit about that, but you may, and I know many of you probably already do, but if you have minimums in your peak season for a last-minute vacancy, you may need to reduce or be flexible with those minimums so that you can make sure you're getting those rooms filled, those vacancies filled. We're going to talk a little bit more about this as we dive into some of the things and how to execute this well. So here's what we have found are 5 elements of a great last-minute email campaign. Honestly, these are elements of a great email campaign, which is why I have last minute in parentheses there. They're going to help you no matter what campaign you're running be more effective, but very much the case with last-minute campaigns. The first is making sure you have a compelling subject line that grabs their attention. I would say this is probably more important with a last-minute campaign than it is a regular email campaign, but it's important, no doubt, for all email campaigns. You need to grab their attention. You need to pull them away from whatever it is that they're doing, and I would say have a subject line that connects with that urgency that you're going to have wrapped around a last-minute opportunity. So your subject line always needs to connect with the message of your campaign, right? It always needs to connect to the content. It always needs to be compelling. But with a last-minute campaign, you have that added sense of urgency you need your subject line to create. And if you're not incorporating urgency into that subject line, you're missing an opportunity there. The next one there is using an engaging photo that elicits an emotional response. We talk a lot about this throughout marketing as a whole, but it's especially true in email as we're trying to move people from where they are inside their email inbox to our website to take a next step. Like that's our first next step on that buyer's journey. And as we're doing that, and as we're trying to convince them to spend money with us, we need to elicit this emotional response because consumers make emotional buying decisions. And we need to connect with them on an emotional level to be able to get them to make a decision to come travel with us. So you want that photo to tell a story in a way that words can't. It's much simpler, it's much faster. You can tell a very quick story through a great photo about the experience, the opportunity, the memories, the connection, whatever you want to call it, whatever is going to get them to come using that photo to communicate that. And then a strong call to action with a clear offer. This is really important. It needs to be high up in your email campaign and be very clear in what the offer is. I think this is a mistake a lot of people make around last-minute offers or around trying to drive these last-minute bookings in this peak season, is they make things too complicated. And when things are complicated, people will take the easy way out. And the easy way out is to stay home. The easy way out is to not take the trip. So we want to make this as simple as possible for people. If you've got tons of terms and conditions or tons of explanation wrapped around it, you're going to hurt your conversion rate. You're going to hurt your rate of people that say, oh, that sounds interesting, to the conversion rate of people that actually make that trip, that actually purchase that booking, that actually spend the money. So you really need to make sure that you have a strong call to action with a clear offer that is not overly wordy, it's not confusing, it's very easy to follow. We also encourage people to have content that supports your offer, i.e. things to do in the area. One of the things that we have found is that people need a reason to travel. And sometimes a last-minute campaign, especially if there's like a price offer in it, that is a reason to travel. Being able to buy something at a discounted rate creates a reason to travel. It's more important if we're not discounting to give them other reasons to come visit. So examples of this would be things like making sure if we're telling you to come for the 4th, we provide you information, the 4th of July being next week. We still have availability for the 4th of July, which honestly, in sharing some travel data, we're seeing the 4th of July a lot softer this year than we've seen it in previous years. I don't know if that's due to a Tuesday or if it's due to international travel being lower or what exactly. It's all the contributing factors. But if we're getting someone to come for the 4th, book for the 4th, we need to give them information, make it easy for them to find the information on things to do around the 4th of July. So we're going to put this campaign out. We're going to put this special out. We're going to tie it back to our website. We need to make sure we're tying in some content around what is there to do in the 4th. If I'm coming to your town for the 4th of July, what are those favorite things to do? What are the locals doing on the 4th of July? Make sure we're connecting the offer to that information. And then I would say this is one of the most important parts of it, but have a great landing page customized to match your offer. So a lot of what we talked about so far is getting someone's attention, getting them to go from their email to your website. But once they're on your website, how do you get that person to convert? And a great landing page that's customized to match your offer will help you do that. And in this case, it's really important the way your website is set up to be able to do that. As we study website design throughout the industry, and we design and host and support tons of websites, as a company, we launch about 6 websites a month. So you do the math. We have a ton of data on what's going on. But one of the most important things we find, and what the data tells us, is that people going to specials and packages pages is typically the 3rd most highest traffic part of a website. The 1st most highest is the homepage, of course, right? Because a lot of people enter your website through your homepage, so that makes sense. The 2nd is where your accommodations, or your properties, or your rooms are actually listed, which makes sense, right? Because that's what they're buying. But then that jockeying for 3rd position, and the 3rd most important part of your website, there's a lot of things that could jockey for that 3rd role. But consistently across our customer base, we see specials and packages being the 3rd highest visited part of a website. So it's really important your website functions really well in this capacity and does a really good job of displaying specials and makes it really easy for you to display specials. And that's how you're going to build this customized landing page. When you go on your website, you know you're creating this campaign, you're creating this offer, you're going to use, hopefully, a specials part of your website to be able to create this great landing page just for this offer. So it's very specific to this offer, should be connected to other things on your website. Like, for example, if you wrote a blog about the 4th of July, you should be connecting this 4th of July offer to your blog. So just kind of a quick potential case study there. If maybe the 4th of July is soft for you, you could get some of this stuff out today even. We're going to end this webinar probably about 1:45, so 1:45 Eastern time. So you'd have plenty of time left in your day to make some of these things happen today. If your website's set up to be able to do that. But the number one reason that we see people don't update their website regularly, and most people don't update their website regularly from a content perspective, is because it's not easy to do so. So if your website's not easy to do so, this is going to be harder for you, but it's really important that your website is easy to use in this capacity so you can publish regular content on a frequent basis. If your website's not easy to use in this way, I'd highly encourage you to look for other opportunities from a website perspective, because you're leaving a lot of opportunity, a lot of money, a lot of transactions on the table by not utilizing your website in this capacity, and that's something we'd be happy to help you with. So just shoot me an email if you need some help with that, but I encourage you to use your website to be able to do that effectively. All right, let's talk about strategy number 2, using social media and boosted posts effectively to maximize peak season revenue. So we're actually going to break this up a little bit today. We're going to talk in a couple categories. One, we're going to talk, I probably should have introed with this, but we're going to talk about how to drive more bookings in peak season. Then we're going to talk about how to get the most out of the bookings that you're getting in peak season. And then we're going to talk a little bit about looking at the future, so past, present, future a little bit, about how to look at the future and leverage your peak season to set yourself up for a great future. So 1 and 2, here we are talking about how to drive more bookings in this peak season and using social media and boosted posts effectively to be able to do that. Make sure that you're creating a compelling post that showcases your room or property. A lot of times we see people just throw posts up that don't have a lot of thought put into them. And you need to make sure, in the same way we're very intentional with our email campaign, we're very intentional with this post that we're putting up, making sure that it has that compelling and clear offer. We talked about that with the email. It's the same concept in social media, but it's executed very, very differently. Making something clear and concise for social media is different than making something clear and concise for email marketing. So you've got to think about that and make sure that you're leveraging that platform and the restrictions around that platform as effectively as possible. Making sure that you're using great imagery, again, different than we're doing it in email marketing, may even be a different image than you use for your email marketing, maybe the same image. but making sure you're using a great image because that's going to help get people's attention, help connect it back. Or you may use a gallery. We often see engagement is higher when we use 4 or more photos on a post, or even better yet, engagement's higher if we use a video on a post. So you need to be thinking about those types of content as well. What do you want your site to have from that perspective? Or excuse me, what do you want this post to have from that perspective? Do you need to have an image? Do you need to have a gallery? Do you need to have a video? Don't force a round peg in a square hole here. Make sure that what you're using from a content, from a media perspective, matches up. Like, don't just use something, don't force bad images into a post because you think you need to have 4 images in a post. Make sure that it's relevant to what you're actually doing, but it can be very effective. Make sure if you're using a video, it's relevant to what your message is. If it's not, you're going to lose people. And then tie it back to a specific landing page. Again, a lot of the same suggestions we're using from email marketing, but in a little bit of a different way. But tie it back to that specific landing page, not your homepage. We see people make this mistake a lot as well. They'll post something on social media. It'll have this great relevant offer, great post, gets traction, but then you click on it and it just goes to their homepage and you're like, I have no idea how to get to the information I was looking at from here. And if you do that, you'll see a really high bounce rate on these clicks. So you need to make sure you're tying that back to the right landing page or the right part of your website. And then encourage people to tag their friends. There's actually ways you can do this within your copy, saying like, tag somebody you know who needs to take a vacation, or tag somebody you know who loves Savannah, or whatever. There's ways to do that, but you'll actually see people, if you look at the comments of posts that are getting a lot of engagement, you'll see people tagging each other. Sometimes that's not prompted. Sometimes it just happens organically, which is great. But that's a pretty common behavior we're seeing in social media these days. Is people they'll post a comment and it'll just be someone's name, because what they're doing is tagging that person so that they see that post come through. And this is a great way to help you extend your reach and get that message out. And then you can encourage that behavior by posting something like what I said earlier about tag your friends who need to take a vacation, or tag your friends who you want to come with you, or whatever, whatever's relevant to that type of post. So some great ways to use social media there, and make sure that you have a post that's set up well for success. Once we have a post that's set up for success, let's talk a little bit about how to boost that post effectively, because that's really important, right? If we have to build a great post, and then we have to boost it effectively to help reach people. Start with that great post you just created. So we're kind of carrying that message through. So that great post we just created on our last slide, we're going to start there. Hopefully, it's already getting some organic traction. So as we look at boosted posts and we're choosing what we're going to boost, what we're not going to boost, we prefer to boost posts after they're getting some organic traction. We found that it just helps work better. We can reach more people for less money, more effectively, if a post is getting some organic reach. I don't know all the reasons behind that, but the logical reason is it's an indicator to typically Facebook is the one we're talking about most here. But typically Facebook sees that post is getting traction, sees people like it. As it gets traction, it kind of feeds its own beast a little bit. It gets more traction, the more organic reach it gets, and it gives us the opportunity to boost that and reach more people. As we do that, make sure that, and one of the things we love about boosted posts, let me jump in and talk a little about this, is the level of targeting that you can do. So a lot of what we're going to talk about here next is how we're going to target this boosted post. And that's a really powerful part of what you can do with your boosted posts. But as part of that targeting, make sure that you're boosting that to a relevant geography. So for example, I wouldn't just boost it to everyone who follows you. I wouldn't boost it to everyone in the United States. As we talk about last minute opportunities, and you've got to think about this, if this is a last minute opportunity you're boosting versus a booking that you have open in August, we're going to use a different strategy here. But if this is a last minute opportunity, carrying that July 4th example through, we're going to think about who is most likely to book that last minute opportunity. So typically we will leverage that boosting around our drive market. And for you, based on your destination, drive market could mean a varying distances. Typically, as we look at a drive market, we're going to look at a 2 to 5 hour drive from your destination. Now, if you're on the coast, like we are in Charleston, that's challenging because you can only go one direction from the coast, right? We can only go west from Charleston. I don't have a 360-degree range of people to pull from, so I've got to do that. You can also think about places have really cheap flights. So that's a little different than the drive market, but if you're in a major, if you're just outside of a major metropolitan market, or you have an airport nearby, targeting people that have very cheap flights, but making sure if you're going to do that, you message the flight. I would message the flight rate in your post because people typically won't fly for a last minute booking because of the perception of how expensive last minute flights are. But if you know last minute flights are cheap from your destination to X, you can leverage that in that way. So for example, in Charleston, we have a lot of people that fly in for weekends from New York City and from Washington, D.C., some Chicago, but not quite as much. But the main reason for that, or one feeds the other, I guess, but flights from New York and flights from DC are really inexpensive into Charleston. You can get a direct flight, and you can get here typically for less than $100 one way. So it's a great opportunity to reach fly-in markets when normally we would only be targeting drive markets. So I didn't put that in the slides, but wanted to kind of touch base on that as well. Knowing which markets are inexpensive to fly in from is really an important part of your marketing. And if you're going to boost that, if you're going to do that, I would create a separate post. I would create a post for your drive market you're going to boost, and I would talk about your distance from big cities. And I would create a post that talks about flights that you're going to boost to your fly-in markets. So you can create that content specific to the audience you're going to reach with it. And when you do that, it's going to be much more effective for you. So knowing that is a really important part of this overall process. And then as you're thinking about that as well, not only is geography important, but your target market for that room or for that property is important as well. So if you have a 2-bedroom condo, that's more likely to book last minute than an 8-bedroom house, because smaller groups can travel easier at the last minute. Large groups rarely make last minute booking decisions. And typically we look at large as 6 or more people. 6 or more people starts getting into a large group, and it gets difficult to coordinate that many people's schedules, especially with a last minute booking. You will find some. Those are typically people that know they're going to plan. They know they're going to travel. They just don't actually pick a place until the last minute. They've already picked a destination. They've already got the date locked in. They just haven't picked an accommodation or where they're going to stay. Whereas smaller groups, couples, families, a couple couples traveling together, they can tend to make more last minute decisions because it's simpler. There's less schedules to be working around. And you've got to make sure you're targeting ages accordingly. And you can do this really well on Facebook as well, but understanding that retirees are more likely to make a last minute weekday booking. So I know probably you're not in a place where you need weekends, assuming you're in a place where you have less than 1 week minimums. But if you're thinking about how do I fill some of these weekday bookings, you will find millennials, you will find other demographics that can travel during the week, but it's less likely. So if we're simply going to play the odds, and we're going to bet the odds in this case, targeting your boosted post to a retired age bracket can be much more effective than targeting, let's say, anybody from 21 to 65, for example, which is kind of a typical adult range people will target in social media, or 65 plus, I think is how it's listed in boosted posts. But you really got to think about that, because we want to make this as targeted as possible, especially if we're paying for this reach. So you want to make sure you're targeting that age range effectively. And this is all good information, regardless of whether we're talking about peak season or not, right? I mean, much of these strategies apply throughout the course of the year. All 5 of these strategies actually apply throughout the course of the year. They may just be more on target or more effective in peak season here. So that's a few elements of a great boosted post to make sure we're taking advantage of to help us drive more peak season bookings, specifically filling in those gaps. You know, I know those gaps in calendars can be really hard to fill. You might have a 2-night gap here or a 3-night gap there, and those little gaps that don't involve a weekend can be really hard to fill. You know, the Sunday, Monday, Tuesday gaps that show up a lot of times if you have less than a 1-week minimum. They can be really hard to fill. So a lot of these strategies can really help you fill those specific gaps. Obviously, you probably don't need any help filling weekends in peak season. If you do, I think you've got another marketing challenge, which we would be happy to talk about, but not really the point of our webinar today. All right, we're going to touch base on number 3, and this is we're going to transition a little bit from driving bookings to leveraging bookings and making sure we're using revenue management to increase revenue in peak season. In reality, revenue management is designed to help you increase revenue in all seasons, but it can be most effective in peak season at a time where you have a high demand for your destination. And where this is one of the myths that I hear a lot as we talk about marketing as I travel and I teach, and I've heard a lot, honestly, in the last 30 days from people, and that's this idea that I'm going to sell at my peak season, so I don't need to be doing marketing. I can't tell you how often I hear that from people, and that's absolutely not true. And we know that's not true, and that myth is busted with some basic economic principles like Economics 101, supply and demand drive rates and revenue every time. Supply and demand drive what people are willing to pay for something. So supply would be the number of units, number of accommodations, number of rooms that you have available. And demand would be the number of people who want to stay in your property for those particular dates. So supply for most of us is relatively fixed. Very few of us are in a place where supply is all that flexible. I know we might add some rooms, we'll add some properties. That's all great, but our supply is not increasing dramatically in most cases. If your supply is increasing dramatically, and we have several customers who are in a place where supply is increasing dramatically, either through acquisition or through whatever means they're getting more supply, more inventory. And if that's the case for you, that's great. It just means you need to be super focused on driving demand, because if you increase supply without increasing demand, you're going to drive price down. So you've got to think about that. But if you're in a place where supply is fixed, you have an opportunity to drive demand. Marketing is your tool to drive demand for your product. And when we increase demand without increasing supply, our rate goes up. And that's what we're using revenue management to capture, is to be able to drive our rates up and charge more than we charged last year, or charge more than we charged the first person who booked it, because every incremental dollar that you charge on a booking is more profitable than the dollar before. As the hospitality industry, we're in a heavily fixed cost business. Our fixed costs are pretty high for most of us, but our variable cost of additional bookings are relatively low. So knowing that every incremental dollar we charge on a booking is much more profitable than the one before it. So incremental revenue, not all dollars are created equal in this case. So using revenue management to do that effectively can mean a huge impact in your bottom line. The average hotel, for example, runs about a 25% profit margin. If they're able to increase rate by 10%, their profit margin typically goes up to about 30%. So if you increase rate by 10%, you're actually increasing your profit margin by about 20%. So it's a huge impact. The impact is double when it comes to profitability. I know that's probably a little bit hard to follow without having all the math laid out on the screen for you, but trust me, the math works. I've done the math. We've shown it before. I don't have, this is its own whole, college course, not even college course, but college degree. So I don't have time to cover it in the 5 to 10 minutes we have allocated for it. But I do have 2 webinars that we taught on this subject. Both are about an hour long. So if you're interested in that, you're really interested in using revenue management to increase revenue in peak season, but all throughout the year, send me an email and I'll get you a copy of those 2 webinars where we talk more in depth about revenue management. And I expand on the principles we've talked about here briefly today. But that's kind of some brief thoughts. Here's a few more as we talk about that. If you're looking at an almost full peak season, you can still drive rate. The main thing we're looking at with revenue management, and it's hard to say things like the main thing we're looking at, but one of the big factors we're looking at is pace. And if you are ahead of pace for this year compared to where you were last year, and you may not be able to track pace, your software may or may not have a great way of doing that. More and more of them are adding that, so that's good. But if you don't have a way to do that, you can use your gut. We prefer to use data over our guts, but if there is no data, using your gut is a good backup. There's actually neuroscience research that says that your gut is much more tied to thinking than you think it is, which is really interesting, and I encourage you to check that out. So random sidebar there. But If you're looking at an almost full peak season, you can still drive rate. So if you're sitting here at the end of June and your July and August is almost completely booked, you can get really aggressive with whatever you have left. Because the chances that you will find someone between now and then that is looking for those dates is much higher than it is like for next week, for example. Or if you only have one thing available, you only need one person to fill it. That's a lot easier than filling 50 units, for example. So the closer you get to 100% occupancy, the more aggressive you can get with your rate. But even if you're looking at that almost full peak season, it's not too late. You can still drive rate for those remaining dates. If you're behind booking pace for peak season, so maybe you're sitting in a place and you're behind pace, and there are people, I just talked about, the 4th of July. As a whole, I would say the 4th of July is behind pace compared to where it historically is. If you're behind pace, you need to be thinking a little bit differently. You might be needing to drop rate, or you might be needing to get more aggressive with your marketing. I would get more aggressive with marketing before I would drop rate. But you need to be thinking about that. And it depends how far behind pace you are and where your rate is. You need to really do a rates analysis. There's a lot that goes into being behind pace and understanding what your next step is. From that, those are all things we can help with. But if you are behind pace right now, you're behind where you were this time last year for peak season or for July and August, you need to be thinking about how do we drive more demand through great marketing? And if we don't have an opportunity to do that, what do we need to do with our rates? And do we need to drop our rates? The answer is not always yes. Dropping rate is the last thing we want to do, but selling a room for 2/3 of what you might have sold it for is better than not selling at all. Some other things, and just kind of some macro level data on whether you need to drop rate. We are seeing demand in destinations that are heavily international traveler driven be really low. Obviously, there's a lot of conversation about international travel right now and the impact of the political environment on international travel. So if you're in a destination that historically relies on a lot of international travelers, you need to have a strategy to reach more U.S.-based travelers this year. Currency exchange ratios are also pretty weak right now for international travelers. The dollar is really strong, so that makes it more expensive for those people to come visit you. So you've got to be thinking about those things as well and making sure that you're factoring all of that information into the decisions that you're making from a revenue management perspective. So lots of information, a lot more than we can really dive into effectively here today, but hopefully that will help you as you're starting that process and you're thinking about revenue management, which is probably more applicable in peak season than any other time of year, but is absolutely applicable all year long. All right, strategy number 4, use life cycle marketing strategies to increase your average guest value. So life cycle really looks at the idea of what is a customer's life cycle with you. You've probably heard the term life cycle before. There's a lot of conversations about life cycle with product life cycles and technology life cycles, and like there's life cycles for everything. But basically the concept is, what is that period of time that someone is engaged with you? And how can we increase that period? How can we increase the value of that period of time? There's lots of ways to break this down into miniature life cycles within an overall guest relationship. You could look at a life cycle of a guest as the first moment they hear about you or visit your website until they no longer are aware of your brand at all whatsoever. Like macro level, that's probably a guest life cycle. But on a smaller scale, you can look at that within the 5 stages of travel: dreaming, planning, booking, experiencing, and remembering. And there is a life cycle that exists for a guest between their booking and their experiencing that's important. And there's a life cycle that exists between experiencing and rebooking that is important. We're going to touch on both of those a little bit as we look at the different life cycles that our guests go through with us. The first, though, is this time between booking and experiencing. And we believe that one of the greatest untapped opportunities in travel today is focusing on the time or the life cycle between booking and experiencing. That there's a tremendous opportunity that exists in this space. And as guests, I think it was actually a HomeAway study that found this data, but as they surveyed guests, what they found was that guests surveyed their favorite part of their vacation is the time between booking and experiencing. The anticipation phase, as it's been coined or branded by some people, is actually guests' favorite part of this overall experience. So it's a really big opportunity to really hone in on what's going on there and really being able to hone in on how to drive guest value in this favorite part of their vacation, the anticipation phase that leads up to it. So what opportunities do you have to increase guest value between booking and experiencing? Look around your business and ask yourself those questions. Ask your guests the question, what could we have done to serve you better between these periods of time? What would have made your experience better? Ask your employees, because they're on the front lines talking to guests on a regular basis. What other profit centers lie within your business? You know, there's a lot of businesses that on the surface look like one thing, in reality are something else completely. I was talking to an innkeeper customer of ours, and we were talking just about business strategy and so forth. We were at a conference together, and we were out late drinking whiskey or something. The truth serum was flowing. And I was talking to him. I said, man, it looks like you've got a really good business going. Like your room sales are strong, your occupancy rate's strong, your revenue's strong. And he just looked at me and he said, Matt, I'm not in the room business. And I was like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Like, you're in the room business. You've got a beautiful property. Everything's great. He said, Matt, I'm in the bar business. He's like, my rooms fill my bar. But for him, he had built his business in a way that he had a ton of engagement from his guests coming into his bar, coming into his restaurant, and they spent a lot of money in his bar and restaurant. And for him, that margin on that was higher than the margin he was getting on his rooms. Now, for most of our customers, that's not true. For most of our customers, their room revenue or their booking revenue they're getting on their properties is higher, and that's the main source of their revenue. So that's actually higher for them. And typically, hotel profit margins are stronger than restaurant profit margins. And I use hotel specifically to kind of apply a broad brushstroke, because there's not data available about profit margins and all the different niches that you might find yourself in. But typically, hotel profit margins would be stronger, but you've got to look at that within your own business and understand what other profit centers exist within that. And you can think about that and just looking around at other businesses. It's interesting, but look at Vegas, for example. They will give rooms away to get people to come spend money and gamble and lose money there. Gambling is a high profit margin business. At least I think it is. I've never studied it, but it seems like it'd be a high profit margin business. So they'll give rooms away for really inexpensive to get people to come gamble with them. There's unbelievable amount of room inventory available in Vegas. They don't really care so much about making money off your room. They care about you spending money in their casino. That's their profit center. So you've got to think about that in your own business. A family friend of ours used to own an old racetrack in the South, and as I was young, he kind of mentored me a little bit, and he said, Matt, I'm not in the same story, but I'm not in the racetrack business. I'm in the concessions business. He said, I don't care what I sell tickets for, because I know if I can get people through my door, what they're going to spend at my concession stand. So it was a really interesting concept for me, because here I was as a young entrepreneur, like trying to find my way in the world and figure these things out. But that's true. Like, what other profit centers exist within your business? What other places do people spend money while they're visiting your destination? What other services should you be providing? Could you be providing to add value to your guests? Airbnb, for example, has made a big push. Like, they started as this room sharing platform, and now they're transitioning into this experience platform where they're selling all sorts of experiences. And if you go to their homepage, they're actually pushing that harder in a lot of ways than they are their rooms, because they're already known for the rooms. They're already getting those transactions. But they've built this massive user base, and they're leveraging that user base and that brand to be able to sell more experiences and really look at that holistic guest experience. If a guest is traveling to a destination, I don't want to just sell them the place they're going to stay. I want to sell them the things they're going to do. I want to sell them their whole experience. And the OTAs have done a great job of this for years. The OTAs have put that together. They've put the flight, and they've put the room, and they've put the rental car, and they've put the activities and the excursions, and they've sold you everything you could possibly need to make money every time you turn around. And I'm not saying you need to be trying to make money off your guests every time they turn around, but if you can add value to your guests, you have an opportunity to create revenue. And thinking about those different things And as you're doing that, this isn't just go start a bar within your accommodation or within your business or whatever. Like, that's not the takeaway. It might be the takeaway for some of you, but it's not the takeaway for everybody. But what opportunities exist? Like, what opportunities exist for you to drive more revenue in other parts of your business, and to take the guests that you have, the user base that you have, just like Airbnb has, and find other ways to monetize that. Find other ways to add value that they're willing to pay for. And as you're doing that, how are you going to market that, right? I mean, that's a big part of it, is making sure that you're marketing that effectively. So that's during the stay, leading up to and during the stay, the time between booking and experiencing. But as we also think about average guest value or lifetime value of a guest, that's another important thing to be thinking about. A lot of that comes after their stay, the time between experiencing, which the experience stage is when they're actually on property, and the time, and then the remembering and getting them to complete a cycle. So dreaming, planning, booking, experiencing, remembering. If you've been with us and you've heard us talk about it before, you know that we believe that if you do that 5-stage cycle well, it's a short jump from remembering the vacation you had to dreaming about the next one you want to take. And you can really leverage your peak season guests well to turn them into shoulder season guests. And now is the time to think about marketing to shoulder season. Now is the time to be building your shoulder season opportunities. In the month of August or maybe early September, we're actually going to be teaching some webinars specifically about shoulder season marketing and how to do that effectively, and encourage you to come to that. It was actually one of the highest attended webinars we taught last year in the beginning of that time. But now is the time to start thinking about that. I know you find yourself very, very busy in this season, especially if you're in a destination that is in peak season. But you need to be thinking about marketing for shoulder season, because you've got to be living in these business cycles. And as an entrepreneur, as a marketing director, as an owner, no matter what role you find yourself in within your organization, you have to be thinking about the next business cycle that you're going to be going into. And I know that can be hard if you're in your business every day working the business. And if you find yourself in that place, you need to engage somebody who can think like this for you. Either somebody on your staff or an agency like ours that can help you think this way. But you've got to be positioning yourself for shoulder season now. Now is a tremendous opportunity to do that effectively, especially with guests who are on vacation with you right now. Guests are on an emotional high during their vacation, assuming things are going well, right? If they're having a terrible vacation and it's raining every day, maybe not so much. But most guests are having an emotional high. Their happiness level is very high, and that emotion and that sentiment is very high. We talk about emotional decisions. So we need to make sure we're doing that effectively. Now is a great time to create rebooking specials for shoulder season or next season with an expiration. I know a lot of you probably do next season booking specials to get people to rebook. And that's great. Honestly, I like the idea of shoulder season specials better, because I don't necessarily want to take a booking a year in advance, a rebook a year in advance. I mean, I do, and I get it because of the overall revenue management principles and like driving that commitment a year ahead, and there's other reasons for that, so I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but I like even more the idea of using this peak season guest to drive shoulder season business and having a rebooking special specifically to that. Hey, you're here in the month of July. It's awesome. Everything's beautiful. The weather's great. The beaches are nice. They're crazy crowded, but they're nice. Now's an opportunity to talk about September, October, November. Like, what's special in those destinations, or what's special in your destination in those months, in that season, and really using marketing now while they're excited, while they're loving your destination, to encourage them to come back. But do it with an expiration, because if they just see it as an open-ended thing, it doesn't create that sense of urgency. We want to use it to that sense of urgency. And then using guest referrals to promote social sharing as well. So being able to share can be very effective part of that strategy too. I'll have to pick it up here and move a little bit faster through our last couple slides. It's about 1:45 already. I didn't think I had that much content for you today, but apparently I did. Get your guests social during their stay as well. I'm going to move through this pretty quick, but guests who post about your property and tag you become a huge marketing channel for you. So it's another way to use guests on vacation, on property right now to set yourself up to have a future season that's very successful. use them to create awareness for you for the coming seasons, for the coming year. They're easier to reach with future posts since they've already engaged with you as well. So your social media will be more successful to reach those people if they've engaged with you. And they'll help you reach birds of a feather with their posts. So you may not be able to reach their friends on your own like you can through boosted posts and some of those things. But it's much more effective, and we know the concept of birds of a feather flock together. So chances are if you have a target customer who's with you, their friends and family are also your target customers. And they can help you reach those people with their posts if they get social during their stay. And here's a few quick ideas to do that. Create a social media scavenger hunt around your destination, and use pictures and tags to get them to notify you that they're doing that they're engaged in it. It gives them something to do while they're on vacation, and it creates a fun and attach a fun and inexpensive prize to it, because people love winning free stuff. You'd be blown away the amount of work people will do to get a free $10 item. Like, you don't even have to put a price tag on it, but just to get this $10 branded item. Maybe it's a small gift baskets with some koozies and whatever you can give away, or maybe it's a coffee mug, or maybe it's a t-shirt or a hat or whatever. Like, I would make it a branded item so that it connects back with you. But people love getting that. Or create an iconic selfie station. We were talking to a customer a few weeks ago who's in a very iconic destination, and we're really encouraging them to use some. They had an opportunity. They had a high traffic part of town, and was encouraging them to use some kind of iconic selfie station. There's an example actually here on the right. This is actually one in Mount Pleasant, which is a suburb of Charleston where we live, or where I live. This is the #1 rated restaurant in Mount Pleasant. 264 restaurants on TripAdvisor, I believe. #1 rated restaurant, one of my favorites. Great local spot, not just a tourist spot. But they have this iconic selfie spot where tons of people take pictures. So this isn't actually a selfie, right? It's a picture, but the concept's the same. But they've missed a tremendous opportunity by not branding this photo. You could see this photo and be like, wow, that is the world's largest Adirondack chair, which I have no idea if it is, but it's a really big Adirondack chair. The colors match their branding. It's on the side of a very busy street in town, which you can see the street there, but there's zero branding in this picture. So tons of people are taking this exact picture. I drive by all the time. I see people climbing on it, taking this picture, but they have missed a tremendous opportunity. Instead of that climb at your own risk sign, which they probably need, but maybe not right in that spot, that's where it should be branded. It should be high enough that it's above people standing or sitting on it, but that it's in that photo. They're missing a tremendous branding opportunity. They've already got the iconic selfie station. They just forgot to brand it. I think there may actually be some branding on the side of this chair, but who sees that? Everyone's picture is from the straight on the angle that we're looking at. And you can see these pictures all over the web if you know the restaurant. But that's the point. Like, what is that for you? Like, what could you invest in that's iconic to your destination that would help you get that engagement? And then number 5, have a 5-star review strategy to drive more reviews. Peak season is peak review time. You have more guests coming through your property than you will have most likely the rest of the year, which means you should be getting more reviews than you're getting the rest of the year. And as we know, reviews are more important than ever. And as we think about reviews, freshness is one of the most critical ranking factors. So this is one of the most important ways you can use peak season to set yourself up to have a great shoulder season, a great off season, and a great next peak season as well. Because driving more reviews and this opportunity, this time you have when lots of people are coming through your doors, will help you get more business in other seasons. There's an old Cornell study that said every position you move up on TripAdvisor means you can increase rate by 10%. I don't know if that's true. I haven't personally studied that, but the Cornell study said that was true years ago. So as we think about that, we know the value of reviews. We know reviews are valuable on Google because it's driving their ranking. We know reviews are valuable on TripAdvisor because it's driving rankings there. On Airbnb, on HomeAway, on Flipkey, on like every platform, reviews are important. But as you think about that, the freshness of those reviews is one of the most critical ranking factors. So you can actually outrank somebody who has more reviews than you and better reviews than you if yours are fresh and good and fresh recently. So here's an example. You probably can't see it because that screenshot might be small for you, but this is actually one of our customers. They're ranked #6 in the Savannah market. and they're outranking a company that's number 8 who has more reviews. They're both 4.5-star properties, but the number 8 company has over 150 more reviews than they do, but they're outranking them because they have more recent reviews. So that freshness, that recency is a really important part of that factor. And they're being outranked, our customers are being outranked by people that have less reviews than they do, but have more recent reviews than they do. So that's part of it as well. We've got to be driving that. And as you're thinking about this, there's this battle between Apple and Google going on as well, always. But Siri is actually using Yelp reviews to rank and provide search results. So you've got to factor that in as well. If you do a Siri search, you're going to get data back from Yelp in a lot of cases, of course, depending on the search string you're actually using. But reviews are more important than ever, and 5-star reviews specifically are more important than ever. So to accommodate and to help drive that for our customers, we've actually launched a 5-star review texting app where we text past guests to come and leave us reviews because we know text has much higher response rates, much higher interaction rates than any other communication medium, and we know people love to interact via text. So this is a great opportunity to use technology to drive more reviews for you in this peak season when you have a lot of people coming through your doors. The great part about this is it doesn't take a lot of time. You can be live and getting more 5-star reviews in 5 minutes or less. You can sign up and set it up in 5 minutes or less and be literally texting people through the app in less than 5 minutes. It's really simple. We designed the process to be very easy, very user-friendly, so you can definitely check that out. You can find more information at q4launch.com/5stars. I'll also post a link here. Let me type this in here real quick into the chat panel if you want to check that out. So you can check that out and find some more information there to help you figure that out. So definitely take advantage of that. It will help you drive revenue because you're ranked higher across the various channels: Google, Flipkey, HomeAway, VRBO, Airbnb, TripAdvisor, all of them are using review data. So that's a really important part of your strategy this year as you're thinking about how to leverage peak season, and a great, easy way to use technology to do that. So I know I've shared a ton of information. It may be a little bit overwhelming. I'm going to launch a poll real quick. Would you like more information on how we could help you maximize peak season bookings? If you're already our customer, I know a lot of our customers are, we're already doing a lot of these things for you. Depending on what package you're on, we may or may not be doing all of these things. So if you want more information on how we could do more of it, let us know. If you're not a customer, we'd love to talk to you about what it would look like for us to help you with this. So a poll's gone live on your screen there. If you'd like us to get in touch with you to get more information, just click yes. If you don't want us to get in touch, just click no. No big deal. Just wanted to put that opportunity out there so that if you're looking for more information, you're looking to take a next step, we want you to know what that next step is, and we want to be able to get in touch with you without having to send this mass email out to see who wants more information. So this poll is a great way to be able to help us do that. So looks like we've got about 57% of the people voted. So if you haven't voted yet, if you could just click yes or no, doesn't matter to me either way which one you click, which just help us keep things moving forward and get those votes in. Awesome. Got a couple more votes coming in. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. That helps us keep things moving forward here. Helps us also make sure that we know people are engaged with what's going on. So I'm going to go ahead and close that poll out. All right. So now we're going to get to Q&A. We've got about 7 minutes left in the hour we had allocated for this. So if you have any questions, please drop those in the chat panel. I'll be happy to get your questions answered. If you want to get in touch with me, you can do that via my contact information on the screen there as well. My direct email address as well as my phone number is available for you on this screen there as well. All right, we will use our chat panel here for some questions. Let me look here. All right, question from Susan in the chat panel. You talk about email marketing and making sure you have a system set up to do that effectively. What do you recommend? Great question, Susan. Get that question a lot, actually. There's a couple we recommend. If you're going to do it yourself and kind of DIY your marketing, MailChimp or Constant Contact are both great platforms to do that. Both have pros and cons that we like about each of them, but are a great place to start. Very inexpensive to get set up and running. So I'd encourage you to check those two things out to kind of see which one might be the right fit for you, see which one's more user-friendly for you to interact with on the back end. If you consider yourself to be a more advanced user, there's other software that we would use and recommend that you use. And if you want to check that out, it's more agency level. It's actually the software we use. We send over 1 million. Actually, I think at this point we're sending over 2 million emails a month. So great opportunity if you're a high volume user or you are more of an advanced user, the software we use has a lot more advanced functionality. It's a little more difficult to use, but has better functionality, and is a little more expensive as well. But email me if you want to know more about that, and I can get you that information if you think you're more of an advanced user. Follow-up question here about the link for the revenue management webinars. Yeah, absolutely. If you want that link for the revenue management webinars, just drop me an email and I will get that to you. I'm not going to email it out to everybody, but I will email it to you if you want to watch those webinars. I believe both of those are on our private YouTube channel, which you can only access via a link. Question here about 5-star. Where do we find more information about the 5-star app? Again, that's all done via, like, all the app is done via text messaging, so super simple, great platform, really high engagement rates from past guests. So that's a really cool way to check that out. And you can find that at q4launch.com/5-stars. There's actually a message in the chat panel with a link to that. q4launch.com/5-stars. You can find more information on that on the app. A question here from Chris. Can you repeat the 5 stages of a stay? It's actually the 5 stages of travel, or the 5 stages of the 5 stages of travel. There's a whole blog on our website about it, Chris, if you want more information. But they're dreaming, planning, booking, experiencing, remembering. And those are the 5 stages that your guest will move through, and that's kind of the big picture life cycle of a guest. Now you can go even bigger picture than that by thinking about the fact that they have multiple stays with you. If guests are coming back and staying multiple times, you can also zoom in a little bit more, a little more granular, and say, okay, what does it look like just that time between booking and experiencing? And we spent a lot of time talking about booking and experiencing and the time between those 2 stages. We also spent some time talking about the time between experiencing, remembering, and then hopefully coming back and making another booking. So that time kind of as you move a guest from the remembering stage to the dreaming and planning stage all over again. So there's some different life cycles we look at within there. So great question. Hopefully that was helpful for you. I think that is all the questions we had in the chat panel, unless I'm missing anything. But that is all the questions I see in the chat panel. So hopefully we got all those answered. Stay tuned for more information on our next webinar. You can actually bookmark that page on our website that we emailed you. Can be very helpful for you to keep in touch, but we'll also email you invitations to our webinars. Had another question just pop up here. Is the commitment to the 5-star text app on a month-to-month basis, or do you require an annual commitment? Question from Michelle. It's a month-to-month basically with a minimum 30-day notice on the cancellation. So month-to-month is essentially the answer to your question there, Michelle. So you can check out more information at q4launch.com/5-stars or email me for information. Question here from Bill. We own a property. They're building more hotels around us. How do we compete with hotels, or is there hotel people and inn people? Does that affect our pricing, Bill? Bill, that's a deep question. Happy to connect with you and help answer that question for you, but it's probably a little bit more than I can answer just kind of off the cuff here. So Bill, if you'll shoot me an email, we can schedule a time to connect and talk a little bit more in depth. There's just a lot that goes into that, but we've very successfully helped people drive rate higher actually when the hotel comes in, when a new hotel comes into their town. So not the case in every situation, but as you look at supply and demand, you could theoretically say, well, supply went up, so my price has got to go down, but that's not necessarily the case. Like, there's more to it than that simplistic explanation. So probably a longer conversation than we can have today, but shoot me an email, Bill, and be happy to connect with you on that conversation. Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for your time today. It was great connecting with you, sharing some of these strategies that we are using to drive more bookings and leverage the value of existing bookings and drive future bookings. Right? I mean, that's what we're looking at. The bookings we have now, or the bookings we want now, the bookings we have now, and then the future bookings we want to get. So hopefully all that's helpful for you. If you have any questions that we weren't able to get to today, please do feel free to get in touch, either via my email address on the screen or the phone number on the screen as well. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.